I've mentioned my ADHD diagnosis on the channel a few times in passing, mostly how it kind of relates to me, being a content creator, how it affects me making cosplays and props, and a lot of you have shared that you've either been diagnosed recently or you suspect that you might have it. I've been through this process of, getting assessed, diagnosed, and I'm currently on ADHD medication. I figured that this might be a helpful video for you guys. I'm just someone with ADHD who got diagnosed this past year, and if we want to be really critical, it was about 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm not going to have all of the answers, but I'm going to give you places to go to for those answers that are way more smart than I am. Basically, in cosplay terms, I'm a work in progress right now. Everything is going to kind of look a little bit ugly and a little bit like, messy right now before it looks good. And I hope that you guys will come along for that ride, because I really am looking to add in a lot more of the ADHD aspect of my life into my content and kind of just bring you behind that and really show you how I make stuff and how cosplay, while it was one of the things that made me realize that I may have ADHD, it's also one of the things that has helped me out so very much as someone with ADHD. I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff and just talking about the stuff behind the costumes and the stuff behind the creativity and the things that we work through in order to make the creations that we show off. I'm always way more interested in that kind of stuff than a, list of paint colors that you use for your costume. So enough of me rambling. What the hell even is ADHD? I'm sure if you clicked on the video that you already have some sort of inkling of what ADHD is, or you may have thought of an example of someone you may know, or just a general idea of someone that you may think has ADHD. This is about as clinical as I'm going to get in this video. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it is a neurodevelopmental disorder as defined by the American Psychiatric Association and the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or the DSM. Currently diagnosed in both children and adults on the basis of symptoms related to hyperactivity, inattentiveness, and impulsivity. One of the things that I learned pretty early on is that there are actually 3 different types or presentations of ADHD. There's the hyperactive type, which is the one that's pretty much the most common and a lot of people associate with ADHD, which is, people like fidgeting or restlessness, or you could even really say that I'm constantly moving my hands, so like that could be a form of hyperactivity. Trouble sitting still, or, frequently interrupting others. And then the inattentive type is more of those symptoms that look like making careless mistakes, appearing to others as kind of, looking spaced out or daydreaming, or just having general trouble focusing. And then lastly, there is the combined type, which is the combination of hyperactivity as well as the inattentive type, and that is actually the type that I was diagnosed with. All of that is all well and good, but one of the better anecdotes that I came across whenever I was, initially researching this, ADHD is actually like a really bad name for this disorder. Not really about having like a deficit of attention at all. It's really about having an inability to regulate that attention. Now you might be thinking that old thing of, well, everyone's a little ADHD. Everyone gets distracted or can't pay attention to certain things every now and again. But one of the best things that I heard about that line of thinking is that, yeah, everyone feels distracted or feels, can't focus at times. However, how much does that affect your life? How hard does that make your life? There have been instances where I quite literally could not drive my car because I could not get myself to focus on the road ahead of me. I was basically sitting in the car trying to back up, and every time I looked back and like forward and back, I wasn't thinking of what I was looking at. I was just going through the motions, and that happened a lot over the past, I want to say, couple years. These aren't the things that people necessarily think of whenever they think of ADHD. They think of people bouncing off the walls and people, making a ruckus and stuff like that. They don't think about the internal presentation of having so many thoughts going on in your head and yet not paying attention to any of them or paying attention to your surroundings. It's also important to remember that no two people have ADHD the exact same way. They don't have the exact same symptoms, and there is no cure for ADHD, though it is highly treatable with things like therapy and medication. If you want some more information on ADHD from, actual experts and even some psychiatrists, I highly suggest checking out How to ADHD, which is actually where I got the definition of ADHD and some of those anecdotes from earlier. And also there is the healthy gamer, and I'll link a couple of my favorite videos from each of them down below. One of the things that really caused me to think that I might have ADHD was realizing that something that I do a lot with my cosplays and costuming is actually a coping mechanism for this undiagnosed ADHD that I now know is ADHD. It was the extent that I overplan my costume projects. I have a few videos on how I do that process, and one of the things I haven't really shared is how I execute on those plans, because they never go according to plan. Obviously, nobody's plans go according to plan, but it's a little bit deeper than that. I'll brainstorm and write down project bits down to the smallest of tasks, like granular little tasks on a list, because if I don't, I'll literally never start working on something. And once I've got this perfectly crafted Kanban board of things to look at and like this board of post-it notes on my wall, I just want to throw it out the window because I don't want this structure and I just want to be spontaneous and go with what I'm excited about that day. It's like this weird contradiction I have every time that I'm working on something, and I can feel myself just fighting with myself to do things and get things done. Worst part of all of it is that there will be weeks where I tell myself that I should be working on something, and that day never comes. I just keep shooting myself until there's nothing to show for it. All of this frustration really never made much sense to me, because when I could get myself to start and actually get into the flow, I could never stop. I would lose hours. I would lose days and sometimes weeks working on projects. I'll do like one more little thing, and then my entire night is gone. The other thing that I struggled with was that whenever I tried to stop working on something, one of two things would happen. I'd either get angry about it because I didn't get everything that I wanted to get done in that amount of time, and surely I had enough time in order to get everything that I wanted to get done during that time. Or like even worse, I would almost feel on edge, like I had some extra energy left over and working on that project all night had really revved me up. Like, it's such a weird feeling, and I only ever get it whenever I can't seem to break focus on something, and it sucks. Like, I hate that feeling. It kept happening over and over and over again with making cosplays, making props, and even sometimes with YouTube videos. I'll be in the middle of editing something and like I tell myself, okay, we're going to get to this one part in the video and then you can go up and you can go to the bathroom. And like it was always one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And then the next thing I knew, it was 3 hours later and I was basically like running to the bathroom wondering what the hell is wrong with me and why I can't just get up and go do something and come back to it, because I was afraid of breaking my focus because I had worked so hard to get to that point. I did not know that this feeling had a name, and it was called hyperfocus. There are a lot of things in my life that I can attribute to having undiagnosed ADHD for so long, but it was this realization here that I make the majority of my costumes in a state of hyperfocus that basically leads me to these pretty consistent cycles of productivity and then intense burnout that really opened my eyes and made me question like, hey, something isn't really quite right here, and I think we need some help. So from like 2018 through 2020, I experienced a lot of things like I just thought were a part of my anxiety. Feeling restless all the time. I always have a really hard time following conversations and especially understanding instructions, and having just a lot of like thoughts in my head. Like nothing bad or scary. They were just like, there's always a thought in my head. It's almost like I'm constantly questioning myself. Remember this important date? Or like, oh, did I remember to feed the dog? Or like, what color am I going to paint this armor? It was just like there's just constant noise going on, and I can't shut my brain off. And I remember this entire time feeling like something was off and I just didn't know how to phrase it or like how to get a doctor or someone to listen to me, because I really had no idea what was going on. I didn't feel like life should be this hard. You know what I mean? Another part of it was the stuff that I was complaining about, it didn't seem like an emergency in the grand scheme of things. And I kind of just brushed it off right around whenever the 2020 shutdowns happened. And it was whenever people were starting to, work from home, everyone's kind of structure was thrown off. It was harder and harder for me to stick to a schedule, stick to these routines, and maintain a healthy work-life balance. Like it was hard, way harder than it had any business being. I am constantly questioning myself. I am constantly in my head telling myself to do something. And when I can't do it, or I just, because someone will say to me like, oh, just go do it. Just get up. It's not that hard. I'm like, it is hard. It is almost like the TV is on and the channels are changing and I don't have the remote. I don't have the option to get up. My brain is literally, quite literally fighting with itself to keep me from doing it. This is also, and I know this is a weird transition, but I think this is why I took so quickly to like con crunch and all of that kind of stuff for creating costumes, because that stress and that anxiety of a shortened deadline, that would really kick me into gear. And what kind of fueled me for getting a lot of things done over the past year. And don't get me wrong, stress and anxiety are, good tools to use in order to get things done. We have them for a reason. However, whenever you are constantly stressed out and constantly on edge like that, it really takes a toll on you. Everything I did was either I was super into it or I was completely bored off my rocker. Like there was just no in between. There were also some other random symptoms, like caffeine has never truly woken me up, and there have actually been times that I would have a Red Bull and I would sleep on a flight. Caffeine just has never given me jitters. They mostly just calm me down, if anything, and sometimes they will kind of give me like blinders, if that makes sense. Like they will allow me to focus a lot easier. So in a way, I kind of started to self-medicate with caffeine. Another big thing is that I was just not really ever aware of my surroundings or what was going on around me. Like one of the better examples, and this is always so funny when I think about it, I would constantly forget whenever we fed Aries, even if I literally just got up and put the food in his bowl and sat back down. Like I would just forget that. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, did Aries eat? Or did I give him something? Like, did I give him a treat? Did he eat? It started happening more and more. And it just got to a point where I was like, what is going on? Like something is amiss here in my brain. Thankfully, it was around this time that I found How to ADHD's YouTube channel. And I'm pretty sure it was that Signs You Might Have ADHD video that brought me there. I realized ADHD was not what I thought it was whenever I was younger. Whenever I was younger, ADHD was actually known as ADD, and it's not just for hyperactive little boys anymore, or it never was. It's just that we've learned so much more in that time that we've learned that there's different presentations of it. Through her channel, I was really introduced to like a whole load of things that I could do to try and make my life easier. A lot of things that go along with ADHD, it's not just medication, it's not just therapy. There's a lot of things of us needing to actually reinforce skills in our life. And she has a lot of great videos on that you can implement. Even if you think you might have ADHD, it can't hurt to just try something and see if it works out for you. So I started using some of the strategies that people suggested. One of them specifically that I remember was How to ADHD talked about a issues log. So the issues log essentially is going through your week, and if there's something that's stopping you from doing a task, then you write down what it was that stopped you from doing it. So a good example of that would be in my imposter syndrome video. I mentioned how whenever I wash my hair, I don't like to go sand 3D prints, or in my case right now, we are sanding drywall, or I actually just finished sanding the drywall today and I couldn't be happier about it. Basically, I don't want to have to get my hair covered in dust right after I just washed it for about an hour and a half. So that issue I wrote down, and I came to the conclusion, well, why don't I just get a shower cap and put a shower cap over top of my hair whenever I'm sanding, and poof. So after doing like all of this research throughout like 2020, I had a pretty good understanding of what ADHD was. I learned that ADHD is not something that you just suddenly develop as an adult, even though it might like seem like that because a lot of people are coming out with late diagnoses and stuff like that. I had a lot of symptoms in my childhood. I had definite issues with impulsive behavior in class. I would oftentimes just get up and randomly shout, or just, get up and walk around the room a lot. Like one of the things that I remember specifically was I jumped out a window in band class. Now, like the window was like maybe 4 feet off the ground, but still I jumped out of a window like whenever I was in 3rd grade. I also remember getting in trouble in music class because we were listening to the Hallelujah chorus. We were, for whatever reason, just counting how many times they say the word hallelujah in it, because that's really good music education right there. We kept on saying how many times, and I kept on going, whoa, every single time. And then eventually he looked at me and said, if you say whoa one more time, you're gonna have to go out into the hallway and write the Hallelujah chorus over and over and over again until you've written it like 1,000 times. And of course I went, whoa, like during that, and I obviously got sent out into the hallway and had to write that. So whenever I went to high school, I just wasn't very good in school. Like I was only really good at like the art stuff. Like I was in art class, but I also got bored by how they wanted me to draw in art class. I remember not really knowing ever how to study or ever learning how to study. I'm pretty sure I still don't know how to do it. It has always been one of those foreign things to me. I see people making note cards or, rereading things and to kind of retain it, whereas I can look at a textbook for like an hour and read it over and over again, and nothing got stuck in that brain up there. I really remember not having a clear sense of who I was. Who I was really dependent on whatever I was like hyper focused on at the time. Now that I'm realizing it, I would, just make these things my entire personality. Now, the college symptoms I really kind of remembered a lot better because obviously that's a little bit more recent, but I went to college for music education, did not graduate with a music education degree, but we will get to that. A big thing I remember in college is that paperwork was so hard for me to do. We had to schedule a lot of things, online, but also we had to get stuff signed in person. And pretty much anytime anything needed signed, I basically prodded into my professors at like odd hours of the night. And a lot of them always told me to do better next time and to make sure to be on top of it. But I never did because I hated doing paperwork. Like I never understood why I had to do so much paperwork. I also had a disastrous freshman year, and it was so bad that I basically considered transferring colleges and switching majors. And I had those papers in hand and they were signed, and that was a feat from what I just told you before. Don't know how I didn't turn that in, because now I look back on that as one of those impulsive decisions that had I really gone through with that really could have changed like the course of basically my entire life. Again, I never studied. In that same vein, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a test that I didn't wing in college. Not even the Praxis 2, which that's a test that a lot of people notoriously fail on the first try. And I passed it on the first try, and I did not study at all for it. Kind of in line with that, I also never really knew how to effectively practice my instrument. I played a euphonium, and I was not a good student. Like, I was not a good euphonium player. I don't know how to practice. I didn't know how to study. And like, just saying this out loud sounds so ridiculous. So imagine me, a music major, telling my professor, I don't know how to practice. What exactly was it that made me stop and think, I think this is ADHD and I think I need to go and seek a diagnosis? I would just sit on the couch for hours, like just scrolling social media, telling myself I should work on this thing, or I should go make that video, or I should work on this cosplay. And I just literally could not do it. Maybe some of it was burnout, and maybe some of it was just, exhaustion from years of going through this cycle of intense productivity and then burning out. But I felt differently this time because I wanted so desperately to work on something. I wasn't trying to avoid it. I really, really wanted to work on something. And no matter what I did, I could not get myself to do it until finally it came to a point where every day I was basically terrified I was going to wake up and not want to make videos or costumes anymore. It is not the first time that I have loved a hobby or something so much that I just ended up quitting, and I didn't want that to happen with this. For example, there was going through my music education degree for 3.5 years and then realized whenever I was about to start student teaching that this wasn't the career for me. Like, I didn't want to do it, and basically just switched my major to a BA in music and graduated the same semester with a BA in music. And I really struggled with that for a while because it felt like I quit, and I did quit. I really did. And from 2013 to 2015, I was really big into running. I ran a lot of marathons and half marathons. And actually, I think I was kind of like self-medicating my ADHD with all of that running. I ended up spraining my ankle on a trail run, got a 3rd-degree sprain, really screwed up my ankle there. Quit running after that. I didn't run any more after that. I dabbled here and there, but never got back up to that speed. This is just like a small amount of things that I've quit. And I didn't want that to happen with cosplay and with YouTube and all this kind of stuff. I'm tired of, having these hobbies that I really, really love, and just one day deciding that they're not good enough anymore. I think the biggest thing for me was just admitting that I needed some help in figuring this out. And for me, that form of help was through therapy and the potential of getting medication if it ended up actually being ADHD. I just did a broad Google search of therapists who specialized in ADHD that were around me and took my insurance. You can probably do this through your, insurance portal. That's probably going to give you a better narrow of results. However, I didn't remember my sign-on for my insurance at the time, so I just did a broad Google search and it did me just fine. I also made sure that they had a psychiatrist on staff who would be able to handle the medication. I also made sure that they specialized in adult ADHD specifically. I was so happy to find a center that ticked like every single box of mine. They also had all of their intake forms online, so I could fill in everything online. I didn't have to print anything out and scan it back in and send it back. Side note, can we talk about how so much of the process of getting diagnosed for ADHD is not ADHD friendly? Like at all. After I filled in that intake form, I then got a phone call from the office, and probably the hardest thing about the whole process was actually having to say to somebody, I need help. It sucked, but it's important to know that there are people out there that are there to help us, and that is their job, and there's nothing to be ashamed of for asking for help. So the first appointment that I had with my therapist was really just all about explaining like why I was there and what I hope to gain from therapy. I mentioned that the meds that I was on since 2016, like they really didn't seem to be doing anything. And then I also made the decision to let them know that I suspected that I had ADHD and wanted to work through that. I was very open about it possibly being something else, but that I knew that I needed help and assistance in figuring it out, because whatever it was impairing me so much that it basically led me to their doorstep of needing therapy. To this day, I am really proud of myself for actually, advocating for myself in that way, because you never know how professionals are going to act over a self-diagnosis. Getting that out into the open really helped a lot, and I think really helped speed up like my treatment and, actually getting better. After a few sessions with my therapist, I think we were only doing like maybe bi-weekly or maybe it was monthly, I can't even remember. She determined that my symptoms were in fact caused by ADHD and that I had comorbid anxiety alongside it. And that just means that I have anxiety with ADHD in the mix, which is actually super common. She then recommended that I have a medication reevaluation with a psychiatrist, and then recommended that I go and get an official ADHD assessment. So I was all for doing this ADHD assessment, but the wait times for getting these assessments was astronomical. She gave me a few places to check out, and I remember like 2 of the 3 places only had spots in December of 2022. So like 2 months from now that I'm filming this video. And at this point it was March, and I could not wait that long. Thankfully, I found a place that had an opening for July, which is whenever I was able to get myself in. The other thing is that it was expensive. Like it was very expensive to get this ADHD assessment. The intake appointment itself, I want to say, was $150 to $200, and then the assessment itself was like $900. This is with insurance, so gotta love healthcare. Gotta love healthcare costs, I wish I had any other insights to give you guys other than that stretch of time from March to July just fucking sucked. Like, excuse me for swearing, but I was still suffering from like these incredibly horrible ADHD symptoms, to the point I felt like all of my therapy was dedicated to me complaining about how I couldn't even do the simplest of things. It was around that time that I started Wellbutrin to hopefully curb these ADHD symptoms, as I really wanted to try non-stimulants first. I had been on that in the past and it actually kind of gave me good results, but it didn't really work very well for me with ADHD, and it kind of started to feel like I was taking it to take it after that. But me being me, I knew that stuff usually takes a little bit of time to reap the full benefits, so I stuck with it until it was finally time to do my ADHD assessment in July. So, funny story about the assessment. The night before my assessment, I forgot about all of the DSM criteria forms that I had to fill out, and normally that's fine for me to do last minute. I'm totally used to doing stuff like that. But I realized that I needed someone else to fill out the forms on my behalf. And thankfully, I have a very understanding husband who filled out those forms for me, no problem. Again, it's kind of horrible how un-ADHD friendly getting an ADHD assessment is, but I digress. The first part of my assessment was held the day before my actual assessment, and we did this over a Zoom call, like a telehealth appointment, and it was just with my assessor, where she asked me some general questions about why I thought I might have ADHD, and talked a little bit about my experience in therapy and what I had been learning there and what my own therapist thought, and then started to ask questions kind of like regarding my childhood symptoms mostly. She asked if anyone in my family was diagnosed or appeared to have symptoms as well. I wish I could sit here and tell you exactly everything I was asked, but the reality is I have ADHD, and the whole appointment was just a blur. Do you remember specifically feeling like I needed to study for it? Like, you know how you come out of a test and you just feel like absolute crap afterwards? Like, you just feel like you didn't have any of the answers? Well, that's how I felt after the assessment. The next day was my assessment, and for that, I actually went into the office. Now, the assessment itself was this 3-hour-long ordeal, and it consisted of a lot of things that I don't remember concretely, but I was told a bunch of stories and was like asked to repeat them back to the assessor, and also had to do a bunch of puzzles. There was this really annoying one, like I'm sure you've seen it, where they show you the words for colors written out, but the color doesn't match the word, and you either had to say the color of the word or the word itself. And oh my god, I absolutely hated that one. I really did. I was so exhausted by the end of it. I knew I was going to be exhausted by the end of it. I took the entire day off of work. If there's one thing that I can recommend to anyone that thinks that they have ADHD and is going to get an ADHD assessment, do not schedule anything for the rest of the day after you have your assessment. There will be nothing there for you to work with, is all I'm going to say. From there, I was told that it would take me like up to 4 weeks to hear back about my results. I ended up getting my report a week later, and let me tell you, there is nothing really that prepares you to read a 10-page document psychoanalyzing yourself, but there it was on the page. My diagnosis of combination type ADHD. After all of that work, I finally had that diagnosis in hand. And all of that brings me to now, where it's been about 3 months since my assessment, and after I got that diagnosis, I decided to try stimulant medication for the first time. First day I took them, it wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't like I suddenly had this locked in, focused mind, or like the physical manifestation of these gifts or something like that. The really big thing that happened that day that made me realize that they were working, I felt a headache coming on. And while I was working, I normally would tell myself, okay, let's get some ibuprofen the next time you get up, like whenever you go to the bathroom or whenever you go eat something. Usually would cycle over and over and on in my head until, again, it was 3 hours later and my headache is even worse, and now it's an emergency at that point. But this time, whenever I thought to myself, I can feel a headache coming on, I should go get some ibuprofen, I thought that thought, and seconds later, I just got up and took some ibuprofen. Like, that's it. That was my defining moment. It's those moments. It's those moments, the times like that I will do the laundry and, move the laundry from the washer to the dryer to taking it out of the dryer and putting it away all in the same day, that I know that the meds are working. They are not a miracle. Like, they don't cure my ADHD or anything like that, but they definitely help the symptoms. It's like the meds give me the option to do the thing when before I quite literally did not have a switch or even an option to do whatever thing I wanted to do. So for me, the medication has helped me out tremendously, but I do have to warn you that the medication side of ADHD treatment is a whole other journey in itself, and I'm genuinely just starting. I only just started on stimulants 3 months ago, and I'm actually in the process of moving over to an extended release stimulant right now. It's just a lot of trial and error and keeping track of symptoms to figure out the right dose. And again, it's super, super ADHD friendly, but like I mentioned, it doesn't always work. And there's certainly not some like cheat code that these meds give me. You still need to have some kind of balance of, the medication to alleviate your symptoms so that you can actually work on the skills and actively build new routines and things for you to build your life on. I still have to work to get my brain to focus on the things I want it to focus on. So I'm gonna have to learn to live with it. I've basically been living with it for 3 years in my own mind. I'm just gonna have to support myself through it by continuing therapy, continuing with the medications, and utilizing accommodations whenever I need to, and just being easier on myself and not shaming myself for the things that I think I should be doing, or shaming myself for things that I'm doing a different way or not the correct way, because my brain thinks differently and that's just how it works, So thank you guys for sticking around and listening to my entire rambly ADHD journey. This is only just the beginning. I hope that you'll continue to follow me as things get a little bit more clear, and maybe I'll have a bit more insight other than just rambling about my symptoms. Thank you as well to my Patreon members who saw a lot of this ADHD stuff behind the scenes this past year. And thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you got something out of it, even if you don't necessarily think that you have ADHD. Maybe you have a loved one who has ADHD and you just want to understand more about it. Or maybe you're just curious about what the heck's going on in my life, and that's cool. I appreciate it as well. I will be talking a lot more about ADHD and how it relates to me and how I cosplay and all that kind of stuff in the future. So I will catch you guys next time. Bye!